In session 4, we are looking at the theological and ethical foundations of public theology. We look first at theological foundations. I expect all of us have photographs around the house in different places. They are photographs of children, grandchildren, family, close friends, absent friends, either through distance or death. The framed photographs are there because they mean something to us. They are symbols of meaning, of love, relationships, and intergenerational relationships. Or in the house there may be a crucifix, a Celtic cross, or a plain simple cross. Jewish people will have the symbol maybe of the Star of David or a menorah. Muslims may not have any religious symbols because there is nothing that can represent the divine. Symbols, even the convictional absence of symbols, mean something and draw us into something deeper. The symbol of the cross points beyond itself, points to or represents love, the power of sacrificial love for the sake of others. Symbols are an integral part of our lives. A symbol points to something other than itself. It evokes meaning, conveys a presence, brings imagination into play. We even participate in the symbol, and it shapes our way of life. We are active participants. We speak of conceptual symbols, and by that we mean a word, a metaphor, a parable, poem, story, a myth that reveals something more. Something is made known, revealed if you like, and is made present to the imagination and the mind. Roger Haidt is an American Jesuit who has written a wonderfully challenging book, Jesus, Symbol of God. Haidt states that all language about God is symbolic. Furthermore, he says that what we know of God, as is opened up to us in the Jesus story, is specifically Christian symbolic knowledge of God. And yet again, language about Jesus as the Christ is also symbolic. When we use religious language, we are using symbolic language. It is not literal language, not literally true, but symbolically true. Literal language is closed language with a single meaning. Christian theology or doctrine is not closed, a literal definition of faith or description of God. Symbol always points to something more, something deeper, and is a symbol of meaning which is never exhausted by one meaning. Haidt very helpfully sets out 5 qualities of symbol. If all talk about God is symbolic, all theology is symbolic, then these qualities are present. 1. Symbol demands participation. Experientially, we are drawn into its meaning. 2. Symbol activates the mind. We begin to search and look for its meaning. 3. Symbol points to transcendence. It points beyond itself to something more, something beyond itself. There is always a beyond dimension. 4. Symbol says something about human existence. It conveys to us a self-knowledge, what it means to be human, and the meaning of humanity. The photographs point to our humanness in relationships. And 5. Symbol has many meanings. It has many possibilities of meaning and is never exhausted by one meaning. Theological language as symbolic language does all of that, demands participation, activates the mind, points always to more, the ultimate something more, says something about who we are as humans, and keeps us open to many meanings and endless meanings. The key symbols of theology are creation, redemption, salvation, sin, and wisdom, symbols of Christology, Trinity, and G-O-D. All language about God is symbolic, metaphoric, and never literal. God is spirit, light, father, mother, and shepherd. There are many other symbols and metaphors. There are perhaps three ways of using language. There is the literal. But when we say God is light, it's not a light bulb. Or God is rock, it's not the Giant's Causeway. The second use of language is metaphor. A metaphor is a symbol, a picture representation that means this but not that. God is mother or father is metaphoric or symbolic language, not literal. And the third is programmatic. The symbol or metaphor is a way of life, a program for action, social action. There is nothing abstract about religious or theological language. It is symbolic, metaphoric, symbols of meaning which are a call to social action. Theological symbols are programmatic, symbols of action in the life of the world. What are the key theological symbols for public theology? What are the symbolic foundations for public theology? Symbols say something about our human existence. Public theology will require a new anthropology. This is the question, what does it mean to be human? Developing this will take us beyond those social, racial, class, and gender constructs, which are really constructs of control invented by those in power. A new anthropology means the primacy of the human. Before we are anything else, before we are male, female, transgender, before we are Irish, British, black, white, rich, poor, Christian or Muslim, we are human, and we are human in relationships. The heart of being human is in those relational values of love, compassion, justice, and non-violence. Public theology will require a new Christology, new symbols of meaning and action. This is the question, who is Jesus? It is really the question Dietrich Bonhoeffer asked in his very dark context of the 1930s with the rise of National Socialism and the Nazis' final solution to the Jewish question. He asked, who is Jesus Christ for us today? For us, that will mean a human Christology. Recovering the human Jesus is about recovering the Jewishness of Jesus, which the church has repressed for the best part of the last 2,000 years. Jesus was Jewish ought no longer to be startling. Jesus was human and not the gender construct of male. The Christian Testament never refers to Jesus as male. It always uses a Greek word which means the human. To realize this will be the discovery that the human is the vehicle for the sacred. As Irenaeus put it in the 2nd century, the glory of God is the human fully alive. At the heart of humanness and the humane is the divine. It is what the Christian community has always meant, or what was grasped by the faith community in John's Gospel. The Word became flesh, human. In the history and context of violence, militarism, and war, we need a Christology of peace. For too long, religion has colluded with violence, militarism, war, empire, and dominating power. God has been the warrior God and Jesus the military Messiah. Religion has been implicated and identified with and legitimated violence and war. Jesus was radically different. And in the tradition of his Hebrew prophets, he disclosed a different and non-violent God. Our time calls for a Christology of peace. We might begin by learning to reread or read as if for the first time the Gospel of Luke. In session 3, we reread only one story from that Gospel, the story of the shepherds and angels in its socio-political context. recognizing that much of the vocabulary in that symbolic story was subversive of Roman imperial vocabulary, undermining the Pax Romana and holding out an alternative vision and practice of peace. There are more symbolic stories of peace in Luke's Gospel. Public theology needs to vision and talk about God in different ways. It requires a new theology. We need to allow our imaginations to be grasped by the social trinity. Now, before we switch off, let me explain beyond the mathematical conundrum. The people who first came up with the metaphor or symbol of the Trinity, and it was a metaphor or symbol and not literal, were the Cappadocian theologians, Cappadocia being a region in modern Turkey. They imaginatively constructed the symbol because they said there is no adequate language to describe God. There is no adequate conceptualization of the ultimate mystery. There are no words to speak of the incomprehensible mystery. We have too often forgotten that and domesticated God, creating God in our own image or the image of the national state. We have lost the mystery and transcendence. This means that we have often no challenge or resistance to superpowers, governments, regimes which think they are ultimate. Nationalism, totalitarianism, the nation state is God beyond criticism. The Cappadocians went on to imagine that the heart of the symbol, the great mystery, was relational and social. The Trinity symbol evoked a community of love, reciprocity, mutuality, interrelational. Their Greek word was perichoresis, from which we derive our word choreography. The Trinity is a symbol of the dance of life and love, into which we are drawn as participants, joining in the movement and the steps. There is nothing static or finished here, but the dynamism of love and energy, a mutual and reciprocal movement. The Trinity was the symbol of community, relational, interrelational, interdependent, harmony and diversity in harmony. The symbol of the Trinity is not only the symbol of the loving, relational dynamism we call God at the heart of the cosmos, it is also a program of social action in the world. Public theology will be symbolic theology, imaginative and participative, and pointing to something more and ever in social movement. Anthropology, Christology, and the social trinity are key theological symbols and foundations of public theology and applied social ethics. There are other key symbols, but enough for now. 2 questions for group discussion. What do we mean by God? And how does this ultimate symbol of meaning shape our approach to public theology? The second question, what is the significance of Christology for public theology? And how does it shape our engagement and action in relation to public issues?